So our next definition is backbend, and backbend is a fun little thing. It's basically a return, except that we would call it a backbend return. A frame is almost always going to have a return, but not always. There are types of frames that don't have returns. Bucks very often is a term that people will use when they're trying to infer something that's truly slip over that does not have a return. And we've done work for a client where they were taking the hollow metal jambs and header and literally slipping them over glazed block, 1950s era construction, where it was a custom, everything's a custom size. They can't modify the glazed block in any way, and they need to just cap it off. So a frame without a return, much less a backbend return, that they then literally attach through the face of the jamb. They come up with a trim over it, I believe, weld the miters in place, or the intersection at the top of each jamb in place over the wall. But you're almost always going to have a return, almost always. Now, a backbend return is a return on that return. So it's a return, it's a second return on the first return. The backbend return is literally only seen in drywall frames. The word drywall is a term used to define a type of frame. Those two terms are generally masonry frames and drywall frames. Think of different wall types. When they say masonry, what do you mean masonry? Brick, block, precast, whatever it could be. When you say drywall, do you mean drywall? Or do you mean plaster and lath? Or do you mean, you know, some sort of stud metal or wood with plywood over it? What do you mean? Masonry frames and drywall frames, masonry and drywall, are used as terms representative of a type of wall construction. A backbend return is going to be seen in those drywall in those drywall type frames because of this reason and this reason alone. If you have a literal drywall wall, wood or metal studs with 1/2 inch, 5/8, there's even 3/4 thick rock over those studs, and you take a masonry frame and you try to slide that down, the return is going to gouge the face, the paper face on the drywall, and tear it. Contractors, that is a big red button to push to get them from okay to angry when that drywall is getting ripped and torn back. It's a problem on different levels. It's a finishing problem, it's a fire rating problem, etc. And the important thing about drywall frames that will have backbend returns is that that backbend return will slide over the drywall. Very nice, doesn't snag, doesn't tear. But you don't want to use a frame with a backbend return in masonry applications because it's most likely that your anchors won't fit in, because now you've got a couple of backbend returns that the T-anchors would have to be notched around, or the stud anchors, or the existing wall anchors would have to be notched around. The other defining characteristic between frames with and without backbend returns is whether or not they have mortar guards welded behind the reinforcements for hinges and strikes. Drywall frames that have backbend returns as standard will not. The anchor type that you'll use on a backbend return equipped frame and ones without are different anchors. You'll generally have compression anchors on backbend return frames. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a little closer look at what it is and the glossary definition. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, backbend. Let's look at the definition. Backbend, the element of the frame profile which extends from the return and is formed parallel to the wall, inside the throat. Also referred to as a second return, double return, drywall return. See frame elements. We would call it a backbend return. So, everybody, if you say backbend return, everyone knows what that means. But these are the SDI definitions. So, you can see clearly here, this is the backbend. Let's take a little closer look at what that actually is. So here is an elevation, pardon me, here's a cross section of a typical single rabbet masonry frame. Okay. Pardon me, this is a typical cross-section of a double rabbet masonry frame. This would be single rabbet. Forgive me. Doesn't really matter. Masonry frame is generally what that is. But when you have an element like that, it's a little excessive there. Forget that. When you've got that, then that becomes, it's most likely a drywall frame, because you're literally going to take your two studs, you're going to have your drywall on both sides, and you're going to want that back bend to slide over the face of the drywall. Right there is where it's going to tear, or you won't be able to get it pushed down really far because you're backing up the paper face here. You're backing it all up there. So that's no good. So that's literally a backbend return. If you see a backbend return frame, it's not a masonry frame. You should be concerned with it not having dust boxes welded in. It very likely is going to have a compression anchor. It's very likely going to have a couple of dimples at the bottom of the jamb for drywall screws to go into to secure that against the stud that would be here. Okay, that's what that literally is for. Okay, I think this wraps up everything we have to say about backbend or backbend return. Thank you very much. On to the next definition. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.